It's a term you've heard or seen at some point in your Doom life. Comp level, short for compatibility level. What do they do? And why are they so important to some Doom players? Let's take a look. Doom still has a huge competitive scene, for nearly 30 years to be exact. People speedrun maps or go for 100% kills in secrets with the fastest time possible. All these accomplishments are then shared and verified by recording in-game demos. A demo is pretty much a sequence of player input that is played back by the engine. As long as the engine used to play back the demo is the same as the recorder's engine, it will play back perfectly fine and will always have the same outcome. However, if you use an engine with a tiny difference in the RNG or AI or anything else that may affect the gameplay, the demo playback will desync. For example, the original Doom 2 and Final Doom engines have tiny differences. In Final Doom, teleport destinations use the source teleporter's height as its endpoint. This will cause demo desyncs. An example of a demo desync is that a teleporting Cacodemon will appear on the ground in Doom 2 and in the air in Final Doom. The Cacodemon will then behave differently depending on the engine. If the demo was recorded in Doom 2, it will desync in Final Doom, and vice versa. Thankfully, instead of using a bunch of different Doom versions to record or playback demos, some source ports are able to emulate specific engines. In this video, we will cover PrBoom Plus's emulation capabilities. So, PrBoom Plus has a lot of different comp levels, but don't worry, you can ignore most of these. Some will emulate obsolete Doom versions like 1.2 and 1.666, only really used to play back demos that were recorded during Doom's early days. Others will emulate older PrBoom Plus versions that had bugs in them. In practice, you will only use comp levels 2, 3, 4, 9 and 11, with 2 and 9 used for the majority of the WODs. How do you input these comp levels? Simple. Launch the game through the command line or a batch file and add the comp level parameter followed by the number. Comp level 2 is used for Doom Engine version 1.9, which is basically Doom 2. There's also Doom 1 version 1.9, which was used before Ultimate Doom came out. Comp level 3 is Ultimate Doom. The difference between this and Doom 1 version 1.9 is that you can select episode 4 in the menu, and boss deaths and lost souls are handled differently in Ultimate Doom and Beyond 2, but we'll get there later. Comp level 4 is Final Doom. As shown in the example a minute ago, Final Doom's engine introduced a weird bug or oversight where teleporting uses the source's height value instead of the destination's height. This causes things to fall down after teleporting if the source teleporter is placed higher than the destinations. Comp level 9 is Boom, an advanced engine with lots of cool features and improvements. There are too many differences between Boom and itself versus Doom, so let's save that for a future video. And last but not least, Comp level 11. Comp level 11 is MBF, a follow-up of Boom with even more features, mostly used for its extra code pointers to create new enemies and effects. In PrBoom Plus, if you don't specify any comp level when booting up the game, it will use the default compatibility level that is set in the options menu. You can change the comp level in-game using the menu, and that comp level will take effect when you start a new map. You can also cycle through the compatibility levels in the game using the TNT comp cheat. But we're not done yet. There's also an entire menu dedicated to compatibility settings. Oh boy, sure gets overwhelming, huh? Well, don't worry. If you boot up the game with a comp level specified, all these settings will be automatically set. For example, there's a setting to control the lost soul limit. If you use comp level 2, this setting will always override behind the scenes to yes when you launch the game. With comp level 9, this setting will always override to no. However, if you launch the game with comp level 2, then use the menu to change the setting to no, then you have no lost soul limit even on comp level 2. Starting a new level or game, we'll use the default comp level 2 settings again and change it back to yes. Unless playing MBF. MBF makes most of these settings optional, so for MBF it is important to make sure all these settings are set in the menu correctly, but we'll get there in a bit. Although when recording MBF demos, it will ignore the menu settings and use enforced values to retain demo compatibility, just like other comp levels. Let's take a look what each compatibility setting does here. Disclaimer, the source port is still actively being worked on, so some comp settings may change and new ones may even get added in the future. Any monster can telefrag on map 30. Normally enemies cannot telefrag you in Doom, but there's an exception programmed in for map 30. Here, spawn cubes can telefrag you, but also regular teleporters. In comp levels 2, 3, 4 and 9 this is still the case, but comp level 11 makes it so only spawn cubes can telefrag you. This setting is optional for MBF, but it is recommended to set it to no. Some objects never hang over tall ledges. A feature introduced in Boom is being able to push enemies off of tall ledges. In Classic Doom this is not possible. MBF added an optional setting for this which doesn't affect Boom. Setting it to yes will emulate Classic Doom behavior. Setting it to no allows you to push enemies off of ledges. This is also the recommended setting. Objects don't fall under their own weight. Objects when placed on ledges get stuck. In MBF, Objects will topple over hanging more than halfway off. Just like any other MBF comp setting, this one is optional, but recommended setting is no. Monsters randomly walk off of moving lifts. MBF improves the enemy's AI to stay on a lift the player is also on. In comp levels 2, 3, 4 and 9, enemies don't care and will walk off because their pathing tells them to. Optional MBF setting, but recommended setting is no. Monsters get stuck on door tracks, an issue you've most likely seen on older Doom engines. Boom, or comp level 9, introduced a fix for this and enemies won't get stuck anymore. It is enforced in comp level 9, but playing on comp level 11 makes it an optional setting. Recommended setting is no. Monsters don't give up on pursuit of targets. In comp levels below 11, enemies that wake up can immediately infight with other enemies. With this setting, however, enemies that wake up will have their infighting threshold set to 60. Each time they move, the threshold decrements. When it reaches 0, it is finally able to infight. Optional MBF setting, recommended setting is no. Archvile resurrects invisible ghosts. This is a classic Doom problem, and sometimes even exploited in some maps. If a crushed corpse gets resurrected by an Archvile, it turns into a ghost and can only be harmed by demon melee attacks or explosions. Boom fixes this and crushed enemies get revived without any ghostly attributes. Optional MBF setting, recommended setting is no. Pain Elemental limited to 21 lost souls. Normally, Pain Elementals cannot spawn any lost souls when 21 or more lost souls are present in the map. Boom eliminates this limit completely, so have fun. Optional in MBF, and you may not like it, but the recommended setting is no. Lost souls get stuck behind walls. Often when a Pain Elemental dies close to a wall, a lost soul may spawn out of bounds. Boom fixes this and there will be no more lost souls. Optional in MBF, recommended setting is no. Blazing doors make double closing sounds. An oversight in Doom's code causes a blazing door to play its closing sound twice. Fixed in Boom and made optional in MBF. Recommended setting is no, although this doesn't affect the gameplay in any way, so do whatever you want. I personally keep it because of nostalgia. Tagged doors don't trigger special lighting. Boom introduced a cool effect where the room's lighting changes when the door opens. Supposedly light shines through the doorway into the room. In MBF this looks even better, where the room lights up gradually instead of instantly. It is enforced in Boom and made optional in MBF. Recommended setting is no. God mode isn't absolute. In classic Doom, God mode does not always protect you. It will only protect you against attacks that do less than 1000 damage. Telefrags do 10,000 damage, so those will always kill you. Also, death exit floors like in E1 and 8 will disable your God mode. In Boom, God mode will always protect you no matter what. And will never be taken away from you. Optional in MBF, recommended setting is no. Power-up cheats are not infinite duration. In classic Doom, using any of the It Behold cheats will grant you the power-up as if you were to pick it up. For example, using It Behold R will grant you 60 seconds of the red suit power-up. MBF introduced an option to give you infinite duration instead, so it pretty much turns into a toggle. However, PrBoom Plus kinda broke this. This setting does nothing, and power-ups given through cheats are always infinite, on any comp level. Dead players can exit levels. Pushing the player's corpse into an exit teleporter in comp levels 2, 3, 4 and 9 will still exit the level. Comp level 10, which is used to emulate a defunct Boom 4 called Alex Doom, decided to disable this feature for whatever reason. It became an optional setting in comp level 11, with the recommended setting set to yes. Sky is unaffected by invulnerability. Another setting that won't affect demo playback. Normally the sky won't change when grabbing invulnerability, but MBF added an optional setting to also change the sky to monochrome when invulnerable. Cannot really recommend a setting, it's a user preference. Use exactly Doom's stair building method. There's an exploit in classic Doom where stair builders raise steps beyond the usual 8 or 16 units. TNT map 30 is a great example. Here, stairs are built out of bounds, with every 3 steps corresponding with the red key steps, incrementing those steps by 24 map units. The Boom developers decided this was a bug, so they fixed it. It breaks TNT map 30's stairs, however, so the map becomes unbeatable. Whoops. The buggy stair builder eventually got implemented back by the MBF team. Yeah, it's messy. Optional on MBF 2 with the recommended setting set to no. Use exactly Doom's floor motion behavior. Boom fixes an issue where sectors refuse to move up or down when things occupying the sector are touching walls or the ceiling. In classic Doom, these floors will never move. Made optional on MBF, recommended setting is no. Use exactly Doom's movement clipping code. Introduced in comp level 10, this setting prevents grabbing items through walls and also eliminates no clipping projectiles altogether. Also enforced in MBF, and not an optional setting for once. Use exactly Doom's line def trigger model. Classic Doom kinda freaks out when you place a line def inside a door. Normally when a door opens, it checks its surrounding sectors to determine what height to raise to. With the line def inside the door, the check goes wrong and it cannot find any sectors at all. So simply said, the door won't move. There's a lot of technicality behind this bug. It isn't just limited to doors. We won't dive too deep into it now, perhaps some other time. Boom fixed this bug and MBF made it optional. Recommended setting is no. Line def effects work with sector tag 0. In Classic Doom, applying a line effect on tag 0 will affect every sector sharing the same tag. This will often turn the map into a surreal mess, as tag 0 is the default value used for sectors. Boom enforces a setting that disallows line effects on sectors using tag 0. Made optional on MBF, recommended setting is no. Emulate pre-ultimate boss death behavior. As mentioned early into the video, there's a subtle difference between Doom 1 version 1.9 and Ultimate Doom version 1.9. In Doom 1, the game didn't really care what kind of boss was killed on the episode's 8th map. You could kill a Spider Mastermind in E2M8 and it would end the map. Hell, you could even kill a Cyberdemon in E1M8 and it would trigger sectors with tag 666. Barons did not affect E2M8 and E3M8 however. This behavior is enforced when playing on comp level 2 and below. Lost Souls don't bounce off flat surfaces. Ultimate Doom and Final Doom fixed the bug where Lost Souls wouldn't bounce off of floors. Doom 1 version 1.9 and Doom 2 however, still contain buggy code where the Lost Souls vertical momentum is set to 0 before it's supposed to bounce, so it never does. They're also supposed to bounce off of ceilings, but it forgot to fix that, so it remains broken forever. Sad. 2S middle textures do not animate. 2S means two-sided. Middle textures with two sides wouldn't animate in Doom version 1.2. A fix for this was introduced in Doom version 1.666, emulated through comp level 1. Retain quirks in Doom's sound code. Boom fixes some sound related oddities in Doom, stuff like playing the oof sound when the player corpse falls down from a great height, chain gun making 2 gunshot sounds when firing with 1 bullet left, being unable to hear other players' pickup sounds in multiplayer games, and more. Use Doom's buggy ouch face code. Exactly what it says. Setting this option to no will show the ouch face when receiving 20 points of damage or more, the way it was supposed to work in the first place. Max health and dehacked applies only to potions. Using dehacked you can change the player's max health. Depending on the comp level, max health's definition may vary. In Classic Doom, max health is always 100, and the dehacked max is the overshot health you can get through health bonuses. In this example, the bonus max health is set to 125. In Boom, this is changed, so the max health is whatever the dehacked value is, and the overshot max health is the dehacked value times 2. This means you can heal up to 125 using stimpaks and medikits, and all the way up to 250 using health bonuses. No predefined translucency for some things. Some things in PrBoom Plus have translucency flags set. For example, fireballs appear transparent with this setting set to no. When set to yes, these things won't appear transparent anymore. Allow MBF sky transfers in all comp levels. The MBF source port introduced a nifty little feature called sky transfers, where it can project upper textures into the sky and even apply scrolling effects and stuff. This setting allows you to see sky transfers on comp levels outside MBF. There's also a hidden compatibility setting, which to my knowledge cannot be set anywhere. It changes how enemies spawned by the Icon of Sin respawn nightmare difficulty. Normally they will respawn at the map's origin, which is point X0 and Y0. With this setting set to no, enemies will respawn where they died. So, now that you have a general idea what the most used comp levels do, what can you do with this info? Well, when you play a new WOD and are wondering which comp level to use, open up the WOD's readme file and check the required engine. Does it say vanilla or limit removing? Then use comp level 2. Is it for Doom 1? Then use comp level 3. Is Plutonia or TNT evolution required as the IWAD? Then use comp level 4. Does it say Boom compatible? Then use comp level 9, also known as Boom version 2.0.2. MBF? Comp level 11. If the readme doesn't specify it, you can always check the Doom wiki to be sure. If you don't care about super accurate gameplay, you can also just use GC Doom like a normal human being. If you're a map maker, make sure to test it on the comp level you've designed it for. Using vanilla Doom 2 specials only, then test it on comp level 2, 3 or 4. Using fancy Boom specials, then test it on comp level 9. Using cool MBF exclusive code pointers and features, then test the map on comp level 11. By the way, with the latest PrBoom Plus version, you don't even need to remember the comp level number. For comp level 2, you can also just use comp level Doom 2, or comp level 1.9. For comp level 3, you can enter comp level Ultimate or comp level U Doom. Comp level 4 can be comp level Final, TNT or Plutonia. Then for comp level 9, there's comp level Boom, and for 11, there's comp level MBF. Testing under the correct comp level is very important. This way you can cover the majority of the source ports. Testing only with GC Doom, even with the strict compatibility, fixes some compatibility issues behind the scenes. So test your map with multiple source ports to ensure everyone can experience your map without any problems. Also, keep note that comp levels aren't always used by competitive players. A casual player like myself who records no damage whatsoever may want to experience the map as specified by the map designer, engine bugs included. I didn't know much about comp levels myself before I wrote the script for this video. Hope I managed to carry over a bit of useful wisdom. Thank you all for watching, for all the support, especially the generous patrons, and massive shoutouts to 19 Day, Agonizing Rectal Pain, Andrew Riss, Andrew Yukimchuk, Andri Dicklin, Art Cox, Basil, Beaks Make Me Coom, Bouncy Bob, Brian Thompson, Bundlerstorm, Kappa Bitch, Chief Kotrake, Cyprian Rusen, Deadman0815, Francis T218, John Guy, Joseph Shantz, Katsuna Teku, Kirill Gorobets, Lars Soderberg, Matthew American, Matthias Sippert, Max Payne 67, Mr. Charon, Nighthawk71, Nuno Pinto, Pyro Shi, Quake Gamer 632, Raven King, Riley, Robert Wakely, Sean H, Sensidai93, Spectier, Steak Jacobs, Stephen Halustik, Teko Kami, The Bell Tolls, The Lonely Galumba, Thomas, Tim Gerasimov, Tim Goldberg, Timothy Koller, Turban2k5, Victor Dikmoe, and Zep Rouse Dower. Have a nice day. In Classic Doom, God Mode does not always protect you. It will only protect you against attacks that do less than It will only attack you.